this graph y equals 4 cosine 3 theta. I'm going to do it in an intelligent way. That is, I'm going to consider, I'm going to graph this between 0 and 2 pi. So to graph this, I'm going to consider the fact that there's a 3 right here. Remember what that 3 means. I'm going to say it in a different way than maybe you've thought about it. That 3 means that within a norm where it would normally take 2 pi to go through one full period, usually that's your period. Now it's going to take 3. You're going to go through in 2 full pi. You're going to go through 3 different revolutions, so to speak, or 3 different periods of that. That's what's happening. So what I like to do for this is to put my 2 pi over here. Let's see. So I'm going to put 2 pi over here, and then I'm going to think to myself, I need to go through 3 full cycles in 2 pi. So here's my first cycle is going to be in there. My second cycle is going to be in here, and my third cycle is going to be in here. So you'll notice that I broke it up in intervals so that I can go through my cycle each time. And remember, with the cosine graph, it starts at the top, and since that's 4 right there, that says, let's call this 4 right here, and let's call that -4. Oops, I shouldn't have put that dot there. Let's call that -4 and call that +4. So it's going to start here, and in one full cycle, it's going to go. It's going to start there and it's going to end there. That's going to be one full cycle through, and it's going to peak out at the bottom down here, or it's going to bottom out over there, and it's going to go through these 2 points in the middle. So there's my graph. That's not my full graph. That would be one cycle. In regular pre-calculus or in algebra 2 trig, they told you to do that, and you'd be done. And this right here would be 2 pi over 3. And then you'd find these points right here. This point right here would be half of 2 pi over 3, which is 1 pi over 3. And this point right here, if you wanted to write it, would be half of pi over 3, which is pi over 6. And this point right here would be pi over 3 plus pi over 6, which is, let's see, 2 through pi over 2?
Yeah.
Pi over 2. And that's just, and I won't bother doing all the tedious details of that, but that's one full cycle. I'm going to have to change colors. Now we're going to do the next cycle, and it's the same thing. It's going to start here, bottom out here, end here, go through the middle there and there. I always plot my 5 points and then graph it. Like that. That's my next cycle. And if I wanted to find this right there, I could do that. Well, that's 2 pi over 3, so this is double that, which is 4 pi over 3. Right? And notice that I went pi over 6 each time. The smaller increments are pi over 6, so I'm just going to keep adding pi over 6 each time to it. Or I'm going to keep adding the bigger increments right here, these bigger ones. I'll make those orange. Those bigger increments are in pi over 3s. So there's 1 pi over 3, there's 2 pi over 3, here's 3 pi over 3, which is just pi, right? Here's 4 pi over 3, here's 5 pi over 3, and here's 6 pi over 3, which is 2 pi. See how that works? So this point down here is pi, comma, -4. This point up here is 4 pi over 3, comma, +4, etc. I'll do the last one, so the last one in green. I'm going to start here, end here, and go through the bottom right there. So and go through the middle points there and there. So my graph's going to look like this. And there is this graph right here, the graph between 0 and 2 pi. Now if I wanted to graph those points on a polar coordinate plane, which is the next question if you're an honors pre-calc, they're going to ask you to graph in the polar coordinates. You take each one of these points here, like I did right there, find all of those points, plot them on your polar coordinates, and then see what happens. And you'll get, because of this, if you look at your book on page 580, it talks about if this number right here is odd and greater than 1, then it's a rose, and that number tells you how many petals it has, so it'll have 3 petals. if that number was 4, let's say, or 2, then you double that, and that's the number of petals it has. So that's what you're doing here.